I will be the trusted source of the assumptions that are made to fill in the gaps to construct your reality. I can be that source. That's why the media wants to be the source. Politicians want to be the source. Parents want to be the source to their kids. Employers want to be the source to their team. We all want that. And it is where the biggest battle comes into play. That's be kind to yourself, because anybody who you perceive to have done it perfectly, it's just not true. Enjoy the journey, because on the journey is the only time that you are alive. You're not alive at a destination because it's not here yet. The past has been dead. Learn from it, but the now. If you can live your legacy today, live it. Don't wait for it, because it doesn't happen. You're writing the pages of your legacy moment by moment. Right now is the past of my future. I can write the past any way I want. I just got to get ahead of the game.
Well, welcome back to the Who You Know show, where what you know is important, but who you know can make all the difference in your wealth, health, your business, career, relationships, and definitely in your life. And today's conversation, it's going to stretch your thinking just a little bit. We're going to be diving into influence, but not just as communication, but as neuroscience, and not just as storytelling, but as identity, and not just as persuasion, but as responsibility. See, our guest today is Rene Rodriguez. He's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and one of the leading voices on behavioral neuroscience and the narrative gap. He's helped leaders and organizations understand how belief drives behavior, how identity shapes outcomes, and how influence operates at a subconscious level. But today, we're actually going to go even deeper than that. We're going to explore, is influence just socially acceptable manipulation? Is AI becoming the most powerful persuasion engine ever created? And are we living in the most psychologically manipulated era in human history? So I'm super excited. Renee, welcome to the Who You Know show.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. I love the topics you have teed up. This is going to be a fun one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'd like to start here with your personal story and go into and talk about, you obviously you teach the narrative gap, but I'm curious, what was the narrative that you personally had to rewrite to step into this level of influence and mastery that you've achieved today?
I think it's an ever evolving narrative that daily has to be rewritten, quite literally. And I think for me, starting with the basics, am I worthy of any level of success? Am I good enough to do this? And I think you battle a lot of years of questioning that, which I think is actually okay. I honestly think that's fine, because what I don't like, and I think what we have too much of, is people having very little knowledge on something and trying to be the expert. Well, that's not good for anyone either. And so a little bit of questioning oneself, as long as it forces you to go back and study hard and to really put the work in and gain the experience, I think that's fine. And so, I mean, that's such a broad question. I could go in a million directions in terms of narrative. I mean, we write narratives of our health and our capacity and what we can do, relationships and everything, and that story that we tell ourselves is so much deeper than the cliche that we've heard so many times. And that's what I think is it's just a lot of discussion needs to happen around that.
Yeah, I agree. Um, was there a specific moment for you personally where you realized that success wasn't just about strategy, but more about identity?
Yeah, I think that identity question is a big one. And I think when you look at how the brain is structured, and there's so many things that we know we don't know, and 30 plus years of really trying to understand what's the purpose of it, right? What's the purpose of behavior? What's the purpose of success? Why do we want to understand the brain? It really comes down to human performance, and performance in what? Relationships and business, etc. But when you realize that your brain isn't structured to help you be successful, it's not structured and designed to be creative. It's designed to keep you pretty much the same. And so then what does the same mean? And so the brain has to interpret what it perceives to be the same. And what it perceives to be the same is created through its identity and the narrative that it tells itself. I am X, right? And um, that identity or that piece that we identify with, your brain, I think Chase Hughes says it perfectly when he says that it's really not designed to seek truth. It's designed to prove and to protect its perceived identity. And so it almost acts like a defense attorney against anything that will try to tell you different. And, that's not new information, but it's so easily dismissed in how important it is to understand how that affects our life. And so I'll give you a few examples. If I identify myself as somebody who really will never be able to be as wealthy as someone else, well, then if that's the truest identity, your brain will seek out through its reticular activating system, which is really what's in charge of attention. It will pick and choose what it will allow into its perception. And if whatever it's allowing into perception is the only data we have, information we have to create some sense of reality, and that data information we put into a story format, beginning, middle, and end, to construct a reality. And so when we trace back how we do that, the identity is what's going to choose what we allow in. The story that we tell ourselves, supported by this identity, is what we allow in. And there's a million examples of things that I do. I do with my audiences all the time, where I have to prove that there's information that we're missing all the time. And what if that information could have led us down the path of more success? And somewhat to your audience, what if the identity is I'm too old to go back to work or to find a job? I missed my window. What if that's the disempowering story that somehow we bought into? Where people, I'm 50. I feel like I'm barely getting started. I made so many mistakes, so many down pat. I put my ladder against the wrong wall so many times. Got to the top going, shoot, wrong wall. I'm too old to this. No, 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 no. Here's the one thing I'll tell you right now is people say, when are you going to retire? I said, well, I whose construct is retirement? Like, who decided that? Who decided 5 days work, 2 days rest? Who decided that? Because I remember reading somewhere it was 6 days work, 1 day rest, somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere
And
there's this book, kinda popular.
somewhere, yeah, right. And so, but now it's this retirement piece where, I mean, the research shows the moment you stop working is when you start truly declining. And so now, am I going to work as hard, travel as much? Well, hopefully I can do the things that I need to do now to get into a place where I can have a little bit more choice and freedom on how I work. But if you don't, you know, people are like, I'm so far behind. Well, you're not starting over. You have 50 years or X amount of years to invest into this next one, where somebody who might be 21 doesn't have many years to invest into the next one. So if you've got knowledge and if you believe knowledge is a currency, there's a narrative. Knowledge is a currency, experience is a currency. Well, it may not be money, but it's a currency invested correctly. Then all of a sudden, maybe that return will be exponential than that of somebody who's got their whole life ahead of them. And so, well, I wish if I would have known, well, you didn't, and you don't, period. So let's just let that go. And if you were their age, you wouldn't know what you know now because we don't have the time machine to do that. So, fruitless thought, fruitless phrases, doesn't matter. Who are you now? What stories are you telling yourself? How much time do you have? What resources do you have available? And let's get moving.
Yeah, I
It has to be simplified.
yeah, I love that you said that because I see it all the time with our audience, they get in their own head, stinking thinking, and start telling themselves these narratives like you're talking about, like I'm too old or it's sometimes it's the victim mentality, right? It's pointing the finger because their situation is hard and they point the finger and try to maybe blame it on uh outside circumstances like, the employers are judging me because of my age or whatever the case may be. And yeah, I think that gets in their way. It prevents them from a lot of times putting forth the effort that's needed to land that next career. And I always tell people your focus becomes your reality. So if you're focused, you know, in this uh, victim mindset or the world's against me or I can't do it because of this and this and this, then that's gonna ultimately, become your reality. And
Yeah.
so,
And the hard part is removing the shame and guilt or the judgment from that too. Because operating out of shame or guilt, or you feeling like when people point that out that they're shaming you or attacking you, it's not the case. And that narrative has to shift. Like that's how narrative creeps into every aspect. Like somebody giving you really good advice and you decide to narrate that. and label that as shame, you're not going to listen to it. Or you decide to label that as, wow, they care enough to tell me really hard truth. I mean, very transparently, I was on a call yesterday. We did a webinar, and I'm a really good salesperson. Like I'd say really good. And I'm a great presenter. I know my knowledge, but I suck at webinar pitches. I am not good. And we have a whole team, a whole thing. We had like 600 registrations and the whole thing. We've been doing this thing, and we had abysmal turnover or conversion. And the team just lit into me. And I sat there, and internally, everything about me wanted to fight this and fight this. And I just listened and I took notes and I tried to breathe. And I had all my reasons because I felt great about the presentation, by the way. I felt like I was on point. I felt like I was finally hitting all the aspects, but for some reason the numbers showed. And I finally just spoke and I said, look, I felt great. I wasn't scattered. I was on point. I go, but the data shows otherwise. Data wins. So I clearly don't know what I'm doing on selling webinars. And no, no, don't be hard. I'm like, no, no, no. I go, I'm not being hard on myself. They're saying you're being hard on yourself. No pity party. I mean, this isn't a pity party. This is just called truth. And I love truth. There's a narrative. I don't enjoy it, especially if it's hard. I don't relish it. I don't seek difficult truth like this, but there is a freedom in it to go, huh, I suck at this. Currently, keyword. I'm not good at this yet. Currently, yet, two really important distinctions in that mentality. And I was having somebody who knows me really well watch me, and they were watching. They go, I see what you mean now when you're hard on yourself versus beating yourself up. And it wasn't, I wasn't, even, I don't even think I was being hard. I was like, guys, clearly I suck at this. I failed. I let you guys down. Everything like, no, don't beat yourself up. Oh, I'm not. Trust me. I go, I feel great because now I know what I suck at. And I also know that somebody's good at it. Why can't I? Oh, that's another narrative. Somebody's good at it. Why can't I? What someone told me, somebody drives that Lamborghini. Why can't you? Well, one, I can't fit in one, but that somebody has that jet. Why can't it be me? There's a narrative, there's a story, there's a belief system, or at least a question that inspires maybe the ounce of possibility that changes the brain because your reticular activating system will start seeking, why not you?
Yeah.
But all of those things are, I think, are critical
Oh,
in that.
yeah, it's great. I mean, it reminds me of a situation I just had recently where, I got, uh, I had pointed out a situation where I was not good at something. I was speaking on stage and, didn't have my confidence monitor. So I didn't have my training wheels, and
Been there.
I wasn't so great. I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't so great. And, I know you teach people how to speak as well. And anyways, it was something that, I was like, "Okay, well, this is good though." It was a great experience for me. I looked at the positive in it. I was like, "Okay, I know where I need help. I know where I need work." You know, I
I always smile when a speaker has a bomb on stage. They come off, they're just like trembling. So I just start smiling. They go, why are you smiling? I go, because the only person that could fail that badly is the person on stage. Audience can't fail that bad. I go, welcome to the game. And you can't get past these moments because how did it feel? Horrible.
oh,
You think you'll do it again? No. I said, what a lesson. What a lesson. And I go, there's three things you can do to back that up. Here's what you have to do. You'll never do it again. But, I could have given you those three things and you might have not believed it, but now you know why.
yeah.
And what a beautiful way. But I love your attitude about that.
Yeah, I'm like, "Okay, I need to take the training wheels off." That's what it showed me. I was like, I've been rolling with training wheels this whole time. I need the training wheels to come off, and I need to get in the game and grow up a little bit, learn how to ride this bike.
If I can offer this, I don't know. I think confidence monitors are beautiful because it allows, I still use guides like that, and I very rarely look at them, but they're there. I have a remarkable, e-paper. I put one on a high boy. If I get it, and I usually have 5 or 7 words, and they just show a sequence, but they allow also ideas, that I've gathered throughout that day about the audience that I may want to talk about. But they're big enough and small enough that I can just glance at it like a scoreboard and see where I'm at. I was at a conference, National Speakers Association, which is sort of the national conference for all speakers. interesting audience in the sense that you got anybody in that stage could be on that stage. Anybody in the audience could also be on that stage. And I remember I had my remarkable, had my notes, and the highboy table could not go on the stage, so it was off stage. And I was like, I wonder if I can read that. So I took my notes and I went to the top edge of the easel pad and I put it up in the top little corner there, 4 words. Nobody could see it from the audience, but I could, just in case I couldn't read it. So I went over, after I did a certain thing, glanced down, the battery was dead. I'm like, I looked down, then up, and I was back in the game. And so there are ways to do that. And I wouldn't say training wheels. I said that it's okay to have backups, but you got to have backups to the backups, to that. And you also have to have that knowledge of, if it's like a rapper, if the beat goes off, can you still rap a cappella?
Right. Yeah, and that's what it showed me in that moment was like, okay, I need more work, um, without the notes, all right? I need no notes. I need to practice it without having, the confidence monitor and have it down to a science, and that, like you said, they're there if you need it, but, yeah, it was a good experience, actually. I didn't feel bad about it after I left. I felt positive about it because it showed me an area where I need work, so, uh, okay, so what's, something people misunderstand about when they hear the term influence expert? Like, what do you think is something people misunderstand about?
Well, I think the word influence has been so bastardized with influencer, and this what I talk about. I don't care about being an influencer. There are people of influence, but I'd rather have influence in the moments that I need it. And when you think about, there are influencers that you meet them one on one and have no influence on you. They can't get on stage and move anybody because you can't edit the live presentation. You can edit a video on social media. You can't edit a live presentation. And so there's a very big difference. And influence is simply the ability to capture one's attention and then get them to act on what you say. And so if I can't capture your attention, there's really no sense in trying to say anything because you're not paying attention anyways. I don't exist. So how do I capture your attention? And then how do I speak in such a way that you not only stay engaged, but you act? And that's the difference. Am I acting on it? And so leadership is one of the greatest expressions of influence. Somebody with a leader with no followers is just a person going on a walk. The followers is kind of important. And so somebody actually following along with the vision, mobilizing to take action, making a shift in some way, shape, or form. And a salesperson that gets, a round of applause and said, "You're a great salesperson. I'm not buying, but man, that was a great presentation." I used to get that all the time. When I was in college, I was like, I was great. And like, man, you're one of the best I've ever heard, Renee. We're not buying today, but man, your presentation was on point. I'd walk out, man, I'm a great salesperson, with a big ego boost and no money. So yeah, I think they also probably, and to your point earlier, the biggest understanding is that influence and manipulation, are they the same? Are they different? And I have a very clear distinction of what manipulation is. Three very distinct descriptors. One, it's the extreme use of persuasion. So there's an extreme sense of it. There's not an appropriate use or an ethical use, but there's an extreme use. Second, at the expense of someone else. Thirdly, done underhandedly. And so it's cryptic. There's secret. It's hidden, and so I don't know what's happening. And usually you can tell with, haha, look, I got him. There's that when people talk about, yeah, no, I'm totally going to turn him. Okay, well, do they know that that's your intention? Number one, what are you going to do to turn them? Turn them from what? Maybe where they're going is the right direction. But if I also felt like somebody was going down the direction of drugs and alcohol, um, some sort of vice, illegal behavior, I would use every ounce of influence I could to get them not to do that. And I'd be very blatant about it. And so it's not at the expense of them, it's at the benefit of them, according to how I see that. Now, that's where you get into some slippery slope because just because I think it's good for them, is it really good for them? Now, there's simple examples like things that are illegal or physically dangerous. But what if it's about where you are, your next job benefits me, but does it really benefit them? And so, obviously there's an ethical foundation that needs to be in place when it comes to utilization of this and a respect of the tool, just like a gun. A gun can be used for anything. It's just power. I can rob a bank, I can kill somebody, but I can also save a life. I can harvest food. I can have fun with my kids, going to the target, doing target practice. There's all sorts of things, but it's not the gun. It's not the tool. It's how it's used.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get into today is, the ethical, right, side of persuasion, right? And if influence techniques, if they can bypass, logic and tap into someone's subconscious, they have, triggers and things like that. Does that create a moral responsibility for the person who's, you know, influencing, I guess we'd say?
Well, I think Uncle Ben, Spider-Man, Peter Parker's uncle, said it best. He said, "With great power comes great responsibility."
Right.
There's somebody else who actually said that. So, anybody who's watching this, put it in the comments. I don't have Google in front of me, but I think with any sort of power or influence comes a massive amount of responsibility. I say, you look at movie stars, athletes, and everything. Well, I'm not a role model. I said, fortunately, you've been thrust into that position.
Right.
So if you want the money, you want the clout, you want all that stuff, you also responsibility comes with that,
Well,
whether you want it or not. And it's yielding a sword of that nature irresponsibly. It just doesn't make it's just not the right move.
and we see that
And so
a lot. We see that a lot in today's day and age with social media and all this kind of stuff. Do you think that we're in the most psychologically
mm,
manipulated era in our history?
there's a case for it. That is for sure. There's a case for that. And I think people are here's the scary part. People are seeing it
Mm.
and it still works.
Oh,
They're watching it happen, and it still works. They're saying, literally, I did nothing wrong. Even though we're watching videos of you doing this, and the use and abuse of media, there's two things you have to look at: cadence and volume of information. That's why you can see things that are crazy, and then within a couple weeks, it's going to go away because of the cadence of communications that are out. There's a cadence of new news, new breaking things, and the volume of that cadence. Right,
well,
it will overshadow any sort of crazy new piece of information.
hmm,
I was convinced that Charlie Kirk would be a continual topic.
right.
It's hardly mentioned anymore.
Yeah, I'm seeing that, exactly that. Like, there will be this virality, this cadence. Like, right now, it's the Epstein, files, and it's
Yeah,
going crazy, and then, like you said, it was Kirk but it's like, it goes fast. It's like for
yeah.
maybe a week or 2, that's the hot thing, and then it's like either society wants to move on to something else, or I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Is it the people deciding, like, "All right, we're
I,
tired of seeing this,"
I tend
or
Yeah, I tend to subscribe to more of what Chase Hughes would say, and I really admire him and what he's doing. Somebody who is at the center of that work that's coming forward to really educate the rest of us on what's happening. And you look at uh, just stepping away from the emotional response. I have several rules that I try to get my kids, my friends, my clients to function under. If you're emotional about politics or let's just say politics, if you're emotional about it, the first question is, do you know these politicians personally? The answer usually is no. I say, okay. Second question, how do you know this information? The media. Okay. Thirdly, do you trust this media? No. Okay. So let's just look at this. You are deciding your emotional state based on a source that you do not trust. Does that make sense? And no, it doesn't. I said, okay. So then you need to understand the psychological factors that are at play here: rage, anger, fear, panic are all highly powerful and potent tools to manipulate behavior, reality, attention, everything. All of things are the precursors to how we construct reality. So it's just a question, and there's no certainty in this process, but you should start to question. Even the process of questioning, you move yourself into a higher brain function instead of a lower primitive one, which is where they try to get us to because we're easily manipulated through that lower brain function. But we get into more of an executive center function of asking questions. And it's just think about it. I always say you have to have tools that supersede the emotional moment. You have to have tools that supersede the emotional moment. And so I'm highly emotional. First question is, am I upset? Great. Second, do I know these people involved? Yes or no? Yes, I do. Okay, great. What do you know about them? I watch them do that. Then the emotion's justified. I get it. That makes sense. I didn't see them do it. Great. Where'd you get the information? Online media. Okay. Do you trust them? Yes. How do you trust them? What credibility do they have? And if you'll watch that if somebody hasn't asked themselves those questions and is so dialed into that is their identity. And here's the thing, when ideology becomes identity, that is scary because then we shut off any access to other information
Mm,
completely.
we see that a lot, right?
Hmm.
People get in a
And it happens on all sides, by the way. This is not left, right, or left.
correct.
It happens everywhere.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. People get into a certain lane and they don't even want to hear,
Yeah.
any other side to the point, you know.
No.
And I
And that's where and that's what I was gonna say. One more thing is that's where logic goes to die, is when our ideology becomes our identity. And so then I can just change, I can just help you identify with something. I can add whatever ideology I want, and you will protect that to its core,
mm,
even if it's wrong.
even if it's wrong.
Hmm.
Yeah, and people don't a lot of times I feel like people run in and admit, even when they know, like, clear as day that it's wrong, it's like, they'll die for it. They're standing in it. They're like, "No." You know? And, you're right, that's pretty dangerous, and that's where we're at as a society, I think, you know? I try to stay, uh, as objective as possible a lot of times, I try, but, I find myself, all transparency, I find myself sometimes getting manipulated by this stupid thing too. It's so
Yeah,
powerful, right?
I'm not immune to it at all. I am just as susceptible now. I may ask more questions. I might be more aware in the moment and to back myself away from it, but it still creeps in. And anybody who thinks that it doesn't, that is the scariest person. Because the person, as I say, because right now, there's another skill that's important in this process is self awareness, which I believe is the number one tool of leadership in somewhat life. If I'm not aware of what's going on, I can, number one, step on people without realizing it. I'm tone deaf to the world. I'm a inflated sense of confidence when I shouldn't. I have certainty when I should have questions and openness. And a lot of research shows that one of the number one signs of a low IQ or low intelligence is certainty. And to me, certainty is also one of the biggest indicators of somebody new or an amateur. Amateurs are new, are certain. And that's been illustrated by the Dunning-Kruger effect, which the less you know, the higher your confidence is. The more you learn, you dip into this valley of despair when you realize, oh my God, I don't know anything. And the more you keep learning, you raise up about a little bit more and you level off about halfway because you realize the more you know, the more you know that you don't know. And the distance between this high confidence and where you're at is openness, is open mindedness, because there's always more. So somebody who's open, saying, "Well, I got to tell you, I've been doing this for a long time, but this is just my experience has been this," and you realize, okay, that is a very very astute individual. But somebody's like, "Nope, this is how it is." Okay, newbie.
Mm,
I try to keep it that simple.
yeah, I mean, and I think, personally, I don't know about you, I know you have a podcast as well. For me, I think what's helped you is having conversations like this, being able to, like, see different perspectives, and just be open-minded to different ideas, viewpoints. Not everybody I talk to on my podcast is the same, leans a certain way or what have you. And, just being able to have conversations with people and still understand that, like, I try to find commonalities rather than things that separate us, like they may not have the exact same viewpoints as me, but I try to find the things that we do align on and the podcast really helps you with that. I'm bringing them on for a reason, so we get to talk about things we align on. And anyway, for me, the podcast has been a great way for me to, uh, just kind of stay objective and not be so one sided to things. Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, so I want to talk about, uh, AI, right, and what's
Mm,
going on there because AI is now, studying human behavior patterns, right?
yeah.
And if AI understands emotional triggers better than a human does, right? Does that threaten free will?
Does it threaten free will?
Yeah, think about it. If it understands our emotional triggers and isn't influencing us and manipulating us at a high level, like, does that influence our free will?
I don't think any more than we've been influenced. I mean, I think free will is the determine our destiny based on the information and tools and knowledge we have. And uh, influence and manipulation and persuasion has always been about leveraging those cognitive biases and weaponizing those in a way to get a certain behavior. And AI is just learning those triggers, no different than we do. Now, it might be a little bit more consistent, but I can also tell you that there's a lot of holes in that game still currently, and a lot of holes in it. And a lot of the fact that it's still new. I mean, it's increasing at a pace that we can't even begin to fathom. We're only in phase two of what real AI is. We were just thinking of a large language model, and or we can ask it questions and chat, but then you get into agentive AI where it's an agent and it can go out there and do things and act. But then you get into teams where they start collaborating. There's a collaboration with agents, and but you're getting into all these lower. But the biggest, highest level at the tip of the iceberg would be super intelligence, which we're not there yet. Super intelligence when AI operates on its own, solving problems on its own, and there's still limitations to that, but it's coming quickly. But I think in terms of free will, I don't think that changes it any different. And maybe I'm missing something here, but and from what I can understand and how I understand free will, I don't think that changes that. I think a lot of people have already given up free will with things like, well, God's plan, that whole statement. I don't know if I buy into God's plan. I think I buy into God's gifts, and it's not God doing it. He gives us gifts. There might be His plan, but whether I'm acting towards His plan is different. Not God's plan for me. Well, I just don't know if I buy into that. There's too many factors, and that would go against free will. Well, if God has a plan for me, then where's my freedom and my will? Where's my freedom of choice? Now, I can choose to go into what I think the purpose of life is, but I don't know if I understand, and maybe it's just a semantics issue. Then I think that's worth the conversation at some point. But I think just saying God's plan is a cop out to responsibility of what I need to do. There's an accountability that needs to happen there. I've been given gifts, then I need to take those gifts and do something with it. And if bad things happen to me, well, that's God's plan. Or maybe you did some stupid things to put yourself in that scenario. There's the accountability piece. And if I can look at that and go, wow, yep, I got myself here. Now that's ownership. I was given better gifts than this. It's kind of like the approach I had. Is like God gave me these gifts, and I should not suck at these webinars. I should be much better at these. I just have not put my time and energy and resources and the gifts that I've been given towards this. Now, if that would be God's plan to me, but I got to take advantage of it, or I can squander it. I don't want to squander that.
Yeah, accountability to me is like a superpower. I personally, I grew up and made a lot of mistakes very, very early on in my life, and it wasn't until I started taking accountability that that's really changed, and that's where the growth is. It's where the lessons are. It's being able to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, uh, I do suck at these webinars. I need to get better, or I do need to lose the confidence monitor. I need to get better. It's being able to understand where you mess up and make pivots and change. And it's one of the things that's helped me as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. Like, I think it's a superpower, accountability. And I think that, our society, we don't see a lot of accountability. right? People, um, they want to point the finger. I see a lot of victim mentality is what I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's again, I think people operate based on what they've been taught, and they operate based on that. And I think the opportunity with podcasts like this is to open them up to new ways of thinking potentially.
When
And nobody ever usually admits when they're in a victim mentality. Because if you've been attacked, if you truly believe you've been attacked and you're walking down the street and somebody comes and punches you in the face, most people would be like, I can't believe they did that. And because you really truly believe that you were attacked. Now, I was about 8 years ago, 10 years ago now. I was at it was a Latin bar lounge place for one of my clients, and it was his birthday. And long story short, um, somebody in the corner, they said something, and he put his drink down. He wanted to fight with me. I'm in a suit. I'm like, okay, what? I'm 6'3", 260 pounds, and a lot of years of MMA, jiu-jitsu, Thai boxing experience. And I'm thinking, I don't want to. I'm too old for this, right? It's not where he's from. He's got a questionable background, but next thing I know, he starts walking to me. His friend hits me in the nose, breaks my nose, lacerates my cornea, one punch, and I get hit. Fights ensue. I start to giggle to myself, and my first thought was, "Well, that's what you get for being out past midnight." and and I go, "Of course, that's what they would do. That's what he would do." I'm not saying they. Don't think I said they from some sort of ethnic background, but somebody that comes from that background, whoever they are, of course, that's if I was growing up there and how I used to be, I probably would have done the same thing. Past midnight, drinks are involved. You got a tough background. You're from the streets. Of course, that's what happens. And why did I even engage? Now, could I have won? Could I have done anything? I don't know. I'm smart enough now to know that they had a lot of friends there. Doesn't matter how strong you are. 1-on-3 doesn't usually work, but I think he was like 1-on-7. It would have been at that point. And so I just giggled to myself, took myself to the ER, got my stitches, went home, and sat with my thoughts for a couple weeks on that one.
that I like that you said that because it's almost like a humbling experience. I'm sure. You get punched in the face like that. Uh, what was Mike Tyson's thing? He said everybody's got
Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face.
punched in the face, right?
It was no humbling. It was no humbling to me. It was because I wasn't asking for it, right? There wasn't anything that I thought. It was legitimately um, a heinous act on their part for no reason, right? But it was a moment of just a reminder. That's what you play you play stupid games. You win stupid prizes. You go out late at night. The odds are something stupid's going to happen. And I would literally just the week before, I'm like, yeah, it's like I don't need to be past out midnight, even if it's for a client. I just don't, and I don't do that. Not because of that incident. I just don't do that because I need sleep and I speak too often and I need rest. But yeah, it's just more of a that's a moment of just you take ownership and you move forward, and then you just don't get yourself in that scenario again.
Yeah, yeah. Anytime I have something like really bad happen to you, that humbles me. But it's all I need it. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, I need it sometimes, the setbacks can be good. You could get punched in the face, have a setback, life could throw you raw deck, a raw hand, and it could be a good thing if you let it, right? If you let it, you learn from it. If you take accountability, if you can turn a setback into a comeback. Um, and a lot of times for me, when I get punched down, hit down, or whatever, life kicks me down, and it's usually a good thing for me. I'm like, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me here? Like, what do I need to learn from this? And there's usually a really strong lesson in there that puts me further ahead if I wouldn't have like, you know what I mean? So, but you got to be open to receiving that. If you're not open to receiving it, again, you're just going to point the finger at everything lost. So.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the best questions you could ever ask yourself. God, what am I supposed to learn here?
Yeah, what are we doing here? Like, what is going on? Uh, so okay, let's go back to AI real quick. Um, do you feel like AI right now, do you feel like it's amplifying human genius, or do you feel like it's amplifying human bias?
I would say that, let me go with the first part about genius. I think it accelerates who you already are. If I'm smart, I'll ask smart questions. And if let's say I'm not, I might ask it questions and get answers. But it's not just, it elevated everybody. So it didn't really create advantages, except if you're using it, anybody who's using it elevated them. So, but now how you use it is I think, the determining factor. I wrote an article on this because I get so frustrated, So I was sharing something we are doing with AI, and the first response I get from somebody is like, "Oh, I use AI too." Like, okay, like you're like they're part of a club too. It's like, oh, I'm not interested in whether you use it. Of course, everybody uses it. That's not unique anymore. 3 years ago, that might have been unique. But the question is how are you using it? And so I wrote the article. I said, stop saying I use AI too. You're ruining and you're killing innovation. What instead say, awesome. How are you using it? Because now that begins collaboration. Because it's like, as long as I've been using it, I promise you other people are doing it differently. And I want to know how they're doing it, because to me, it's not the fact that you use it that matters. It's how you're using it in its application that is where it gets fun. And so I think if you're collaborating with it, it can increase your genius and your effectiveness. And I think it can also reveal some genius in people that they didn't realize that they had. It can eliminate some of the roadblocks that they've had. If you're genius but you're not a good writer, and we teach this concept called content at the speed of thought. They don't like to write, they don't like to capture. I said, but what upsets you? And they don't know that I'm recording them, transcribing everything they're saying, and I get them to rant an idea, and they rant and they rant and ask a couple of questions. Well, what do you think the solution is? I mean, that sounds great. And then they just say, no, you got to be able to do this. And so I got this whole transcript, and I said, help, synthesize these thoughts into an article in a Forbes format and add actionable insights. And it takes everything they said and just structures it. And they look at me, and they're like, what just happened? I've been wanting to say it this way. I said, well, that's what copywriters are good for. But now you don't have to pay for that copywriting. And they're like, okay, that's pretty wild. And all of a sudden, they can use this and they're unleash this new level of genius and this freedom to be able to do something.
Yeah, I see that, the creativity and, I think people do have skills or gifts that are lying dormant that they haven't really been exercising, they haven't really been practicing, if you will, and, this gives them kinda like, a license to go get creative again. We're seeing people are, they get in there and where the how-to was maybe the problem, they didn't really know how to create their vision or how to create their dream or whatever it is, like, that how-to is now no longer there, like, it's helping them with that, bridging that gap. Speaking of gap, though, I wanna make sure we don't, go too far past this. For someone who's hearing this for the first time, what is the narrative gap? You say narrative gap. What's the narrative gap?
So to understand narrative gap, you understand the role of narrative that it plays in the brain. Narrative is anything with a beginning, middle, and an end. It's a way of categorizing our experience of life. And it does happen in a sequence. I know that seems kind of weird, but the narrative is the story in which we explain something. I come from this background. I'll never be this. Those are all narratives. And so the narrative of a story, how it's explained, he came in and violently said this, or he just attacked him right from the beginning, versus saying, well, he asked him some tough questions. There's different ways to narrate, and that narration creates meaning, and that meaning creates our understanding. So a narrative is in essence a construct of our reality. It's how we construct it.
Yeah.
And within that, if I were to just stop talking like that.
I was like, "What just happened?"
Exactly. You notice how the anxiety went up, and I created a gap in our narrative. I'm on your podcast. It's supposed to be seamless and continuous. Dead space is not a good thing. And I created that dead space. Your brain immediately went on high alert to understand what was going on in the moment,
I was like, "He got
which means it
a
didn't.
message, he got a phone call, something like, I was creating my own narrative, like,
There you go.
"Good
And
morning,
so
what's
now,
going on? He looked over here."
there you go. Your brain then starts to, with that gap that was created, it starts to fill it in with possible scenarios, possible stories. But my question is where did you choose those stories from? Because not everybody fills in those stories the same way. Some fill them in with positive. Some people give us the benefit of the doubt. Some people fill them in immediately with the most negative. And the source of those assumptions and stories that are shared to me is the most fascinating. Because what if your source is the media and the media has decided to share with you a certain amount of life and you now fill in all of those narrative gaps that happen, the thousands upon thousands happen on a daily basis with sources that maybe are negative. Maybe it's your negative parents. Maybe it's a small minded person, or maybe it's a really positive person. Maybe it's you're reading and you had something really powerful. Maybe whatever that source is becomes how we construct reality. And so when we think about the narrative gap, it's anytime we don't have a story between two people or a situation, we don't understand it all, your brain cannot handle that. So it immediately fills in the gap, immediately fills in the gap. And the question is how? And that gap, the way it fills, is the way we construct reality. And so if you think about all the narrative gaps that are happening on a daily basis, in the moment that that happened, we make assumptions based on some sort of source. So we're assuming the majority of our reality. And so our understanding of reality is based mostly on assumptions. But what it means to influence is if I want the ultimate influence, I will be the trusted source of the assumptions that are made to fill in the gaps to construct your reality. I can be that source. That's why the media wants to be the source. Politicians want to be the source. Parents want to be the source to their kids. We employers want to be in source to their team. We all want that, and it is where the biggest battle comes into play. That's why podcasts. You want to be a trusted source in the arena of executives and people transitioning from one job to another or getting back into the workforce. That's why you do these things. I want to be an influence. That's why I wrote a book and I speak and do the things that I do. We're all racing to be that source. And so the narrative gap is that. And usually it's something that haunts people because they start immediately playing back how many gaps they have in their relationships at home, at work, with their kids, and they start immediately going to fill those gaps, which is pretty important.
What should someone do then? Because again, to your point, we may be filling those gaps with, again, all kinds of assumptions and a lot of times because of the way our brains are wired, we're probably even going towards negative assumptions over positive, right? Because you may think, like I said, when you paused on this show, right? You paused and I was like, "Oh, something was more important." You got a text message or, something it could have been something positive though, right? So what should someone do to, I guess, have a little bit more control over that gap and that space?
Same answers before, self awareness first,
Well, and
right? Increase your knowledge of the reality and accept the reality that there's a lot of narrative gaps and your brain will fill in those gaps. And there's a source that could be positive, could be negative based on their past experience. Once you understand that, then curiosity comes into play. How might that have been filled? And then the self awareness is saying, "Wow, I didn't fill in the. I left a few gaps in here. Let me fill them. Hey, just." And I like to say, "Hey, just so we don't make any assumptions, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. When I said this is what I meant." And or, "Hey, I know that I hadn't reached out in a while. I just want to let you know what's happening." It could be, it could be in a situation where it's say, "You know what? Hey, Trevor, you just left a lot of gaps open. Can you fill those so I don't have to do that, please? Because I'm starting to fill them in a way I don't think works for us." Oh God, where's the gap? Well, okay, you said this, but then I haven't heard from you. Next, or you said you had this issue, but what's going on? What's that? Oh man, no, it's just this. Oh, okay, cool, thank you.
yeah, we always just
And
the worst, and it's like sometimes it's like so far off,
yeah,
from
and we do that.
reality.
The reason we assume the worst is through negativity bias. It's built into our human psyche. There's hundreds of cognitive biases that really truly are the underpinnings of our behavior. And negativity bias is the tendency that the more negative we are, the more we survive, right? So if we we're walking in the woods and we hear something, something walking in the woods, we're not going to assume the best. We're probably going to assume the worst. You're walking in the middle of the night, and all of that assumption to the worst is what keeps you alive. So fear and anxiety actually will play a very good role here. Unfortunately, it's oftentimes wrong, and a lot of times we can take that same fear towards people or towards ideas and change, etc.
Do you think that social media is rewiring our brains to respond to emotion over truth?
100%. Yeah, it's once they figured it out, they said, we can control behavior this way. Let's turn it up. And it's it's not as simple as I just described it to, by the way. I also tend to believe that most people want the same things. Like, I have ideas and I want you to pay attention to those ideas. And so I'm going to use everything I can. I'm going to use hooks and I'm going to use noise and emotion to try to really get you to buy into the work that I do. No different than somebody else who believes in their product. And now there are people out there, powerful, smart, not the majority though, that know these tools and blatantly will use them to change how people see things. Now, sadly, in their mind, they think they're right. Somebody said, every man is right in their own mind. Every person is right in their own mind, and that's another piece I think that's important to understand is, do you assume the worst intent on this individual? And there's ways to test that, but
Yeah, well, as you were talking, I was thinking of a scenario I had recently where I kinda got I don't know if conned is the right word, but, on social media, there was, an agency that did videos and clips and, they handle your social media for you, right? And, the stuff that they were putting out there looked amazing and, got into the sales process with them and, I bit the bullet and, signed on and next thing you know, they're gone. Like, they took my money and they were gone. And they had done that for so many people too. Like, I couldn't believe
uh,
it happened, right? Like, because they were putting the
happened to me too.
it
I bought 10 I bought 10 cameras, portable little Osmo type, 4K cameras for my clients. I was going to bought them for an event. I was like, this is a great price. This must be a competitor to this other thing. I confirmed it with another person, spent the money. 6 weeks later, I'm like, where are those cameras?
mm,
Company doesn't even exist anymore.
uh, yeah, yeah. Well, it taught me a lesson though. I through that process again, I look at it and I go, "Okay, crap, I just got screwed, on this one." But did I what could I have done differently? Right? What could I have done differently? I didn't check any of their clients' work. I didn't go talk to anyone. I didn't verify. Like, there's things that I could have done to uh, make sure that didn't happen, and, but I didn't do my homework. So, yeah, you gotta be careful with social media these days. Um, well, yeah, this is really good. Do you think we're moving right now from objective truth to narrative truth? And if so, is that dangerous?
Let's define those for a minute. Objective truth to narrative truth. I think we are in an era that is emotionally driven to through the narrative much more than before because people are realizing the power of it and it's expanding and they're abusing it more than ever. I do think that 100%. I think that the dialogue has gone out the window in a lot of senses, but I also think there's a rise in people fighting against that too, and I hold on to that. I think there's people that are saying, okay, this enough's enough, and the trust has been lost in a lot of areas. It's being exposed. There's some level of reckoning coming in that arena. It's going to be ugly, but it's. I don't think it's something that's going to disrupt our lives any more than you allow it to. It's life has got a lot of amazing things still. I think to me, I can't control the collective. I can only control the world that I have impact on. And if I can be really good at articulating that concern, if I can be really good at articulating the opportunity, then maybe I can help some other people build up more self awareness. Like I don't want to guide what my kids think, but I do want to teach them how to critically think. I think critical thinking is something that is somewhat of a lost art, but I think it's just like any cycle, it'll come back once they realize that it doesn't work the other way.
Yeah,
I believe that at least.
I know, I agree. I think the thinking is, yeah, like you said, maybe like a lost art, right? We need
Yeah.
that one back up. Um, Earlier you had mentioned, that there's been a lot of narratives through your life that you've had to kinda rewrite. Are there any that you're actively rewriting for yourself right now?
Yeah, and it's we say rewriting. I don't think it's a process of physically grabbing a pen and paper and rewriting. To me, I rewrite the narrative literally by what do I allow into my life. If I want to be healthier, I'll hang around really healthy, fit people. If I want more money, I hang around people that have money coming in. If I want a good relationships, I hang around with those people. That it's usually the impacts that I have around me. What do I listen to on social media? What podcasts am I listening to? What books am I reading? So, what's the input that I'm allowing into my life? And any input that doesn't allow the narrative I really need in my life, I just don't give it much attention. And I think that's what's there. And so I think, as I age, I'm getting older, 50 years old, longevity becomes important, mobility becomes important. Um, I do travel a lot, and so I've got to keep my health front and center, and also financial pieces. Like, okay, what point do I want to have the more of the financial freedom that I want, and what's the plan, and how do I ensure that my actions are driving towards that goal, and how do I say to no the things that are outside of that? And that to me is understanding the story that I want to create and what is contributing to it or not. And so I think that's a more tangible way of thinking about narrative.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, kinda taking inventory and not letting things influence you that are pulling you away from their goals, right?
Yeah, and I would also last part I would say there too is that managing what comes out of my mouth.
Mm, that's good.
That is a stronger force than people really realize. Is what am I saying out loud?
That's it.
Not
What
because some magical thing, but it's when you speak it out loud, it goes into the world and you actually hear it. They say, be careful what you say because you might actually listen.
you
and but I think that there's something magical about the words that are spoken. We can't always control the thoughts right away, at least, but we can control what we say. And the moment we say it out loud, we gives it more power.
Mm.
And
S
I don't want to give power to things that aren't helping.
so do you think, uh, based on what we were talking about, the things that you're hearing and seeing and watching and consuming versus the things that you say, which one do you think has more power?
Well, I think the source of what I say is based on what I consume. So I'd probably say if there was a hierarchy, consumption is there. But now I could also make the case to saying if you've been surrounded by nothing but negative, you can change that by what it is that you speak. But then how would you even know the positive to speak? You'd have to consume that too. Right. So I think there is an order to it of what you consume first and then a discipline around speaking it. I know a lot of people that consume all the right stuff and still speak negatively, and that makes no sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. Your environment, the people you associate with, the things that you're listening to, right? Like, people adapt. Like we naturally adapt. So if you get in an environment where it's all positive speaking people or, rah, 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 like you're gonna kinda like pick some of that up and you're gonna start speaking some of that, right? I think it's why church is a good thing. You go to church, you could get like-minded individuals, and yeah, you start speaking that. Um, so I think you're right. It's your environment, the things you're listening to. What are you putting here? What is it? Garbage in, garbage out. So
Yeah, it's very true. Garbage in, garbage out. Some things are that simple. That's for sure.
yeah, awesome. Okay, so a couple real quick questions. What kind of impact do you ultimately want your work personally to leave behind? What are you trying to accomplish here?
Um, the impact that I want my work to leave behind
Mhm.
is a realization that a lot more is possible than maybe we realized.
Mm.
You have the ability to impact at a greater level. There is a process to it. There's a science. It can be learned. It's not something you're born into. A better life awaits.